Seeking Wisdom, Week 10, Deuteronomy, the Embodiment of Judaism. The Book of Deuteronomy is the fifth book in the Bible and the last of the Pentateuch. The title, Deuteronomy, means second law. So where is the first law? In fact, the text never mentioned a second law, but chapter 17, verse 18 states, "When he, the king, has taken the throne of his kingdom, he shall have a copy of this law written for him in the presence of the Levitical priests." Thus, the word second law is a word drawn from this sentence to make the title. This is not a new set of laws, but an amendment, interpretation, and clarification of the Mosaic laws that were previously included in Leviticus and Numbers, which just so happens to contain the first law. The content of Deuteronomy includes the words of a very special individual, Moses, with the Israelites as the listeners. This book is also known as Moses' Discourse, or the last words of Moses before his death, telling the Israelites how to live when they entered the Promised Land. The Book of Deuteronomy is a unique book that forms a tradition and covers a large part of Jewish literature. Therefore, we call Deuteronomy the embodiment of Judaism, because it is a result of Leviticus's thoughts and teachings. These teachings are rooted in the days when the Israelites accompanied Moses through the desert and were constantly growing and gathering over time and cover many historical events. The Book of Deuteronomy includes 34 chapters divided into 3 parts. The preamble of chapters 1 to 11. With Moses' 2 discourses, he recalls the deeds the Lord made and called on God's people to be more faithful to the covenant, especially to the 10 Commandments. The centerpiece of these 2 discourses is a Shema prayer. "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. Keep these words that I am commanding you today in your heart." Shema, meaning to hear, did not simply mean hear, but encourage people to respond positively to what they heard, by obeying the response with all their hearts to the best of their ability, even if they paid with their life. With love as a motivation to voluntarily obey the law, obedience to this law made Israel stand out among all people. Moses shows the Israelites that God is the only God that brings life and prosperity to those that believe. In return, by obeying God and the law, people the wisdom and mercy of God. These people are consecrated to God, and worshiping and following His law help them maintain a special relationship with God. The Promised Land is a part of a great blessing that has been devoted to them. The basis of the relationship between God and the Israelites does not exist because of honor, but because of their steadfast love of God, who chose a small nation among all the nations. The second part covers chapters 12 to 26 and is a summary of the laws. The Israelites have only one temple and one God, a God that loves the poor. All of these people gave their share, with a percentage of the tithing going to address the needs of the poor, and this made Israel stand out among all people because of their righteousness and the way they worshipped only one God. These laws also clearly define the qualities of the Israelite leaders, priests, and prophets, and were aimed at building a civil society based on law and fairness that protected the disadvantaged and lonely. Many of these laws laid out the groundwork for the political and religious organizations of Israel. Chapters 27 to 34 explains Moses' speech and death. In Moses' speech, he leaves each of the Israelites with a choice to make: obedience or disobedience, life or death, reward or punishment. Obedience and love will lead these people to a life of prosperity, and disobedience and rebellion will lead them to poverty, death, and punishment. See, I have set before you today life and prosperity, death and adversity. I know that after I die, you will rebel and turn away from God and lead to exile. Just as Moses predicted, the Israelites were exiled in Babylon in 587 when the kingdom collapsed. Even more unbelievable, he also predicted that one day God would bring them back. Even if you are exiled to the ends of the world, from there the Lord your God will gather you, and from there he will bring you back. The Lord your God will bring you into the land that your ancestors possessed, and you will possess it. He will make you more prosperous and numerous than your ancestors. After these words were spoken, Moses blessed the people and walked up Mount Moab and died, looking toward the promised land, appointing Joshua as his successor. Looking back at the Pentateuch, we see that Moses played a particularly influential role during the formation of Israel's history in many respects: politics, religion, society, law, and military. This may be the end of the first 5 books of the Bible, but we see some unanswered questions. The promise of salvation in Genesis 3:15 has not yet come. How will God save the world through Abraham's descendants? How can a holy God be reconciled with a rebellious people? How can God transform the hardened heart of these disloyal people? These are questions we will look into more deeply in the next books. Today, when we compare our lives to the lives of the Israelites, we know it is all God's grace. Moses' insistence on remembering or recalling God's loving actions is paramount because it shows how these people who feel the love of God are devoted to Him and obey Him. If people ever forget what God has done for them, they will gradually start to disobey Him and no longer believe in Him. The Israelites simply need to remember the miserable experience they lived through. The Promised Land is not just given to them, it is a gift from God. Each and every one of us must also do the same in order to help us recall our life's events in the light of faith and feel the presence and love of God. Every time we look back and recall special moments, especially when we were in danger, injured, or in our darkest hour, we clearly feel all that is God's gift. Each time we feel the love and presence of God, we are reminded that we need to live humbly and be thankful so the wounds of our souls may be healed and help us stand firm in our love and trust. These lessons often remind us that we should not be proud of our success or despair in our failures. God constantly shows us an unconditional love, and we just can't grasp the fact of disloyalty, hard-heartedness, or the rebellions of Israel. And we certainly do not understand the heart of humanity today, always wanting to rebel and leave God. Like the chosen people, Christians are holy people that are dedicated to God, and they love to proclaim His accomplishments. He calls us out of the darkness into a place full of magical light. Every day we are given a gift from God, but it is not a reward for all humans. It is from God's unconditional mercy. When we are aware of this, we are much more motivated to live in the Christian spirit of thanksgiving and humility. We all make choices in our everyday life, but Moses presented 2 choices to the Israelites: to live or die. In his 3rd discourse, after reviewing the history of God's people, Moses said to the people, "Look, today I offer you to choose, either to live or to die." This quote shows us that we need to encompass the whole law of God so we can live and be happy and not destroy freedom. But isn't the law of life to die? It becomes a contradiction of the gospel. Unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains just a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Many people today are afraid to mention words like sacrifice or giving up. They spend their entire lives looking for a passion or something else and only feel empty at the end. What if we spent our entire life looking for God? Can you imagine how happy we would be when at the end we found what we were looking for? A life of abundance, of grace, and peace is always within our grasp. Story. A rich Jewish man got a serious illness. Nearly dead, he called his servant and said, "I'm going to die. I leave all my possessions to you. After I die, bring this will to the rabbi." The will states, "I leave all my possessions to my faithful servant. My own son will have the right to choose only one of all my properties. Shortly after his death, the servant inherited all of his fortune. He cheerfully brought the will to the rabbi. They then went to see the rich man's son. The rabbi said to the son, "Your father has left all his possessions to his servant. You have the right to choose only one thing that your father had." Being an intelligent man, he understood what his father meant. So he answered without hesitation, "I choose this servant." So the son had both a servant and the right to inherit all of the property the father has left. The rich man in the story is very smart. Since his son could not be present when he was about to die, he devised this plan to avoid the possibility of the servant seizing or dispersing his possessions before his son could return. This story is just one of many stories in the wise Jewish literature, all inspired by the Book of Deuteronomy, the quintessence of Judaism. This is a will that Moses left to the people before his death, in which he told them not to forget their slavery, to remain faithful to God, so that they could inherit his entire promise to their ancestors. That's why they are known as the smartest people in the world. Their communication and business skills are superior to other people. They have this outstanding intelligence through obedience of the law and fear of God. Because the fear of God is a source of all wisdom, and knowing the Most Holy One is a real understanding. Thank you for watching, and we hope you join us for a new video next Friday. The answers to this week's questions will be revealed in next week's video. Remember, every Friday at 7 p.m., the Seeking Wisdom Challenge will be posted on YouTube and Facebook. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, or subscribe to our channel. Questions? Leave them in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, and we wish you a wonderful weekend full of grace and joy.